and we are the Little Shop of Physics, and we are live, and we have a special show for you today called Science It Up. So last week, we asked kids for their questions, and we took the questions, and the idea was we're going to use that as a starting point to brainstorm about, like, what could we do where we can explore and we can experiment. Basically, we took each question and we scienced it up. That's what we're doing today. We're going to science it up. So we're going to start with some questions, and I'll start with the first one. And then, who was it? Pandra asked, how can you see clouds when they are air? Well, here's a little fish tank here. I'm going to take this little fish tank, and I am going to turn on a little unit in here which makes mist. And I get little droplets of water in the air above the water. And I can see I'm basically making a cloud. I'm basically making a cloud. And it's made of little water droplets in air. But then we said, okay, how can I take this cloud? Could I take this cloud and turn it into colors? So we tweaked the question a little bit and saying, rather than how can we see clouds, we said, could we make a colorful cloud? And here's a question. I'm going to put some green food coloring in the water. And if I take green food coloring and put it in the water, do you think it will turn the cloud green? And I'm going to do a little experiment here. And I want folks to say in the chat, what do you think? Yes or no? Is this going to turn green, or is it going to stay white? Go ahead and type it in the chat. Give me a yes or a no.
I'm in favor of the green cloud.
Saying no, yes. Some folks are saying green, yes. White, yes. No, man, I don't think so. Man, people are all over the map on this one. Well, you know what we do when we have a question like that? We science it up. So I'm going to take this water. I'm going to put in a whole bunch of green food coloring. And clearly the water is getting real, real green. And I can see green droplets are popping up. And so the water that's making up the cloud is undeniably green, but the cloud has stayed white, has stayed white. What? And so the question that we asked, and you can see that if I bring this over, there's green droplets on the side of the tank. So the water that's and there's green droplets on my laptop as well as on my desk. It's probably not so awesome. I'm doing a science experiment with my laptop, probably not so good. But the question was, can I make a colorful cloud? So far, we haven't been able to, but we learned something, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to science it up, and whatever it turns out, if it's what we expect or not, we're going to learn something from the process. That's what we're going to do. And next question, 96619 asked, why do snowflakes have different designs?
Indeed they did. And so we thought, I took a freezer and I tried to spray some water in a freezer to see if I could make snowflakes. That didn't work, which is okay if things don't work in science. And then I decided to steal one of Brian's ideas, and I took his little mist maker out of his tank, and then I decided to put it in the freezer. And so, for a while there, yeah, it has stopped making fog. But at first we tried to just put it in there and see if it would make snowflakes by itself, which it didn't quite do, so we decided to change it a little bit more, and we put something that we could get some spiky stuff on. So we've got this little fuzzy pumpkin toy, and so I've got a microscope here attached to my laptop over there, and I'm just gonna put it up and we'll see what it looks like up close here.
And I think we've got some photos that we took. And look at those crystals on the pumpkin. The frost is on the pumpkin. And if a kid wanted to science this up and wanted to play with this, there's some variables that they could change too. And that's one of the things we want to do is think, what can we change? I changed the color of the water. But if someone was going to do this and wanted to look at snowflakes, what kind of things could they change?
I would say maybe try to change the temperature of the freezer, because you can make your freezer colder.
What about the liquid?
The liquid. You could put some things in the water, maybe?
Yeah.
That's a nice idea. I like that. And so, kids, I would say take this and run with it. All the things that we're showing you, if folks are thinking about doing science fair projects, take them and run with them. Oh, and by the way, this show was suggested by Mrs. Nimlow's class at PSD Virtual, because they're going to do a science fair, and they wanted to know, they wanted to show in the scientific process, and so we're doing a show in the scientific process. So Mrs. Nimlow's class, shout out to you folks. Shout out to you folks for suggesting this idea, which I have to say is perhaps the most fun show we ever did. And then Rainbow asked us a question.
Yes, so Rainbow asked us, how do liquids turn into gas or turn to gas? How do they change phase? So I decided, well...
Oh, and also asked...
Yes, how are clouds made? So we decided to explore how clouds are made because clouds are made by air or water vapor, which is a gas, condensing and turning into water droplets. So here I'm going to make a cloud in a bottle. So I have a bottle, I'm going to spray some water in there, spray a little bit more, and then I'm going to add some smoke because it turns out that you kind of need something for the water to start to stick to it, right? But you can use all different sorts of things. We've just found that smoke works the best. So now I'm going to pump some air into this bottle. First I'm going to roll it around. And if I pump air into this bottle...
All right. And Brennan, when you pump air in, what happens to the temperature?
Yeah, so the air, you're putting more air into the bottle. So you're causing the air to bump into one another. And you heat up the air inside. So here I have a pretty good amount of air in there.
Great. And when you put the air in the bottle, when you compressed it, you warmed it up.
Yes,
absolutely.
I did. So when I heat up the water, it turns into water vapor, so it turns into a gas. But if I release some of the air...
Cloudy.
I should start to get this...
Cloud-tastic right there. I'm seeing a cloud form. Definitely.
I cool off the air, I cause little water droplets to condense, and then I make a cloud. But if I add more air, that cloud disappears.
You just cleared the cloudy day.
I did.
I want to do that in reality.
I can do that.
Oh man. You're like
and
making and breaking clouds.
again. It's kind of awesome. Now another thing that we decided to explore was something that we've done before, but we wanted to focus more on water turning into gas, right? So here I have a bottle, and I have some eggs as well, and I'm going to pour some hot water into this bottle. Okay, and then I'm going to cover this because that's really hot water, and I'm going to shake my bottle, and what I'm doing is I'm basically creating water vapor in the bottle. And then I have some eggs. If I put an egg on the top here, what happens is I created some hot air inside this bottle, right? But as time goes on, that air starts to cool. So then I get this area of low pressure in the bottle.
All right, so because the water vapor is turning back into liquid water.
Yeah, so there's less air in the bottle.
Oh, and actually I can see it because the side of the bottle is fogging up.
Yes.
And if it's fogging up, what that tells me is it's turning from gas into little droplets of liquid, just like the little droplets of liquid that made the cloud.
Yep. And so I get low pressure inside the bottle, I get high pressure outside, and eventually this egg will be pushed inside the bottle, which is kind of awesome.
And that's something that people could play with this, couldn't they? You could try different ways.
Yeah, you could try different ways to heat up the water in the bottle, right? Because you just need to heat up the water in the bottle, turn it into gas, and then cool it back down again.
When someone asks, "Is it going to cook?" and I'm going to say, "That sounds like something you could experiment with." Could you cook an egg this way?
Could I cook it even more?
Could you cook it? I don't know. And I'm going to say we just let that one stay.
I think
and let's see if eventually that thing pops. We'll hear it go.
Yes.
But the next thing we had a question from Raylan. And Raylan asked, why does poop smell bad? And we thought, well, we're not going to explore that. But let's think about how your scent works. And in particular, you're really, really good at seeing where something is. You're really good about hearing where something is. But you're not very good about smelling where a smell is coming from. But some animals really, really are. And the difference is, we were wondering, is it because they have nostrils that are further apart? Mine are really close together, but if they were further apart, would I be able to do it? And Brenna was an incredibly good sport.
Yes, I have my nose flutes here that I used, and y'all get to see that in a video. I'm excited to see it. I haven't seen it yet, so.
Oh, it's kind of awesome. So it's basically, here we go, peppermints on a plate. And then play with no peppermint. And Brenna's just sitting there. Can she tell where the scent is coming from? Can she tell where it's coming from? The answer, let's see what she does. Brenna's sniffing, sniffing, sniffing. And she points towards, oh, fail.
I was so wrong.
So wrong. But now she's got the nose extenders. It's like nostril telescopes right there. And Brenna says, oh yeah, that's the plate with the peppermint oil right there. So basically, little nose telescopes. And I would think, thinking about how to extend the sense of smell could be kind of a fun science project for someone. And then Cookie Cat, our buddy Cookie Cat, Lockhart, asked us a question, and that's over to Maud.
So Lockhart asked, why do things tumble because of gravity? And well, we thought, well, we've kind of gone over gravity and how things fall and tumble, but we thought we'd extend upon that question and go, well, can things tumble in water? And that brought us to the topic of how does like buoyancy work? And so I've got a couple different shapes here that are pretty interesting. So I'm just gonna, here we go.
All right, so, and Maud, show us the shape that you got.
Yeah, so I've got a few different ones. I'm gonna start with maybe just a cube. So I've got a little cube. I'm gonna drop it in the water.
And I want to know, like, is it going to float? Whoa, and it floats point up.
That's weird.
I want it to float flat side up, but it doesn't float flat side up. It floats pointy end up.
Well, you know, maybe if I cut it in half and I've got like this little triangle.
Okay, a triangle.
Put a triangle down. That kind of flipped over.
And that floats flat side up.
So maybe if I take a rectangle like that, or an even longer one.
That one's stable.
What if you try to float it on its end?
Oh, can you float it on its... Oh, no, it does not like floating on its end.
No, it does not like that. And then I figured, hey, let's go completely circular. And I've got some cylinders here. And if I drop those in long side up, those also don't really want to stay that way.
Whoa, they float on their sides.
And then here, this half cylinder I thought was interesting because it can float flat side up. But if I flip it over, it also floats that way, which kind of shows you how like boats can capsize and stay upside down and they don't flip up. We've got like tops that like to stay. If I try to put a spinning top on its side, it just floats right back up. And as we know, spheres just kind of stay the way they want to be. But that wasn't good enough for me. So we got some little duckies here. And some of them like to float, and some of them don't.
Some of them, like that horse duck is just,
horse duck and witch duck don't like to float. So I figured, let me do some surgery on the witch duck, and I put this little, screw on its bottom end to see if I could make it.
Oh, there we go.
And it floats. And that's because you have a center of buoyancy and then you have a center of mass. And as long as the center of mass, like when I add mass to the bottom here, is lower than the center of buoyancy that's going to be up in the middle of the duck, it'll float right side up.
And I could see this being a good project for someone to say like, hey, how do different shapes float? Or how could I make a boat which is totally stable? Like if I tip it over, it rights itself. Because that would be an awesome thing to have. Like that's the kind of boat I want. That is awesome. That is an awesome one. And then our next question came from 96947.
Also known as Kyle.
Also known as Kyle.
They said, why is oil less dense than water? And while that is a very, very good question, I decided to see, well, is there an oil that is more dense than water?
Oh, so is there oil that sinks in water?
Yes. So here I have a variety of oils. I have mineral oil, I have gear oil, I have motor oil, and regular vegetable oil, and none of these are more dense than water. Even the heaviest one, which is this gear oil, it's super viscous and really, really heavy. It's still, when I pour water in, it still is less dense.
Oh yeah, it's still
water.
floaty.
Wow.
Could you make the oil sink?
I don't know. We tried a bunch of different things. We tried making the water salty. We tried dissolving acetone in these different oils, and they did nothing. We tried to mix different oils. We could not get one oil to sink.
So we just can't make oil sink.
Yeah, but if y'all can figure out a way to make it sink, that would be pretty cool because...
Prove us wrong.
Yeah, oil spills and
Do it.
stuff. The reason that it's so bad is because the oil stays at the top, and then the fishes and things can't get oxygen. So if you can make an oil that sinks, it hurt the bottom of the ocean, but the fish might be okay.
Yeah.
So
that would be a good project for somebody, I would think. Can you make oil sink? And then we had a question from Peyton. Can you pour water on a light without it going out? Which is an awesome question. What do you think? You
know what? Challenge accepted, Peyton.
I say we science it up.
So I'm going to start this off by saying that I used like one of our little LED circuit kits. If you've ever seen us before, you know that we like to give these out. And I will preface this by saying this is a tiny battery, a tiny light. Do not use anything any bigger than this or anything that plugs into a wall. This is the only thing you're allowed to do. This.
Even so, you've got to talk to your folks about this.
yes.
Yeah, for sure.
But it seemed like a question we can science it up. Like,
so I've got a couple different glasses of different liquids here. And the first I'm going to start with is just water.
And it doesn't go out.
No, it's
lit.
still there. And then I decided, well, that's not good enough, so I'll try some oil. So if I drop it in the oil, still on.
Still on. And if you you can see the light still on. So dropping in water, dropping in oil, still on.
Yep. So then I figured, let's try something else. So I mixed some salt in some water. That, I believe, is this one. Nope, that's the sugar. And in the salt, oh, it's all grease.
It's staying on. Whoa.
Huh.
Like, you can't make that thing go out. That flashlight is bound and determined.
Didn't you say earlier, Maude, that when you put it in the salt water, it went out?
Yeah, and that just goes to show that sometimes science does not.
I wonder if putting it in the oil first
Kind of
gives it like an oily coating.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go. Now it's out.
Now it's washed out. There we go.
There we go. So, but that was kind of interesting because, and this is cool, something happened that we didn't expect, and it wasn't what we saw yesterday. And that's kind of the coolest thing in science, I think.
Absolutely.
And
you
Peyton
say you got to
says,
try
cool.
things a lot of different times, Brian, to figure out what's really going on.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And Marley Gebhardt asked, how fast is the speed of light? And it's like, whoa, Marley, good question. How could you measure that? We want to know, how could you measure the speed of light? And Emma did a little experiment, made a video for us about that. And so first, we did some things outside with just stretched cords. And when you make what's called a standing wave on a cord, you get places where it's vibrating a lot and places where it's not vibrating much at all. And the same thing happens in a microwave oven. Microwave ovens put out microwaves, and they travel at the speed of light. And if you're inside your microwave oven, there are places that are pretty wavy and places that aren't. And so I get hot spots and I get cold spots. And the distance between two successive hot spots, if you measure that actually lets you calculate the wave of light. You can actually calculate the speed of light. And we see it as well. We talk about hot spots and cold spots in the microwave, and that's why you have your turntable. And you can see the hot spots and the cold spots. We just took a plate or a board with a wet paper towel on it. And if we look at it with a thermal camera, you can see there's definitely hot spots and cold spots. Those are nodes and antinodes of the standing wave of the microwaves. And if you measure the wavelength, you can measure the speed of light, which is kind of an amazing, amazing thing. So, and we're going to post a document that shows you how you could actually make this measurement. And that would be an awesome science fair project with people. Shows you how to do that calculation yourself. Now, after that, we're going to address Mr. People Person's question, which is how do TVs work? Okay. And we got this, and like it's complicated, and I don't want to, but what I want to do is say, I want to experiment from the outside and say, can I say something about how TVs work from the outside without opening them? Some science on it. So I have this television here, and I am going to turn it on. And one thought that we had was perhaps magnetism is involved. So I'm going to turn this on. I'm going to get colors on the screen. And once I get colors on the screen, will the colors change if I put a magnet on the screen? And this is an old TV.
Brian, that TV looks as old as you.
It's not as old. Very few things are as old as me, but it's pretty old. It's pretty old.
Well, I mean, to be 100
And if I put my magnet here,
years.
look at the colors up here. That is kind of awesome. That is kind of awesome, getting all kinds of crazy colors.
Wow.
And so clearly magnetism's involved. But another thing that's involved is electricity. And if you've ever used an old school television like this, and this is not one of the new televisions, and don't ever try this with like a television you care about. But this is an old one we got at a garage sale. We got this one for $5, so I feel comfortable experimenting with this. I'm going to put a little aluminum foil sphere in front of the screen. And if I turn the screen off, what I get is a little bit of static electricity on the screen, and that makes this thing bounce back and forth to my finger. And it's transferring electricity. So there's a little bit of static electricity going on. There's a little bit of magnetism going on. And we said, let's see what investigations we can do from the outside that tell us how the TV works. So if you want to experiment with that, only on the outside, because there's dangerous stuff inside. Only a TV that you don't care about, one that you got at a garage sale for $5 is a good choice. Talk with your parents and do some experimenting. Do some science to see how that TV works. Now we're over to Casey, and one who has joined us in place of Maud, 100803 asked, why is the sky blue?
They did. And we took that question and we wanted to know, well, the sky is blue, but what's the difference between that light that you're getting from the sky when you're in the sun and that light when you're in the shade?
Because when I'm in direct sunlight, I'm getting all the light. And when I'm in the shade, I'm not getting light from the sun. I'm getting light from the sky.
The sky.
Oh, and the light from the sky is blue.
Right. And so we took out this little toy. It's just a little solar-powered flower. I'm sure you guys have seen these before. They just move when they're in the sunlight. And we took these outside and we put these filters on it that block everything but the infrared light, which is the longest wavelength of light. And we put it over the little solar panel that's on the front here. And I believe we have a video for this to show what happened.
All right, so here's our flowers in the sun and the shade. And the one in the shade, once you put the filter on it, it's slowing down and stopped, whereas the one in the sun is still going. So there's a very different physics of the light in the sun and the light in the shade.
That's right.
But if you take the beads, and you've got beads that change color with the short wavelengths, and if we put those in the sun and in the shade,
no, the beads still change color.
The beads still change color. So there's some things that are different, but some things aren't. I think that is something that someone could science up. You could do some more investigations on that. And then RXS or RexTS asked, how does your brain move your legs? And Emma did a little investigation on that, and she does a little voiceover with this. So let's go ahead and share the video and the sound and see Emma do a little investigation on that.
My name is Emma. I'm an intern here at Little Shop of Physics. Today I'm going to be doing a small demonstration on how electrical signals from your brain make your muscles move. I'm really nervous. I just have this little tool here, and when I press this button, it clicks, which releases an electrical signal. I am going to put this electrical signal on my arm where I think a nerve will be. Should make my fingers move involuntarily. Okay, this is probably going to hurt a little bit. I'm shocking myself for the sake of time. Okay, so my arm is relaxed. It's just rested on the table. I'm not moving it. Oh! Ow!
Awesome. It looks like she made a success. Directly stimulated the nerve and got some muscle action. That wasn't coming from her brain. That was coming from the little device. That was an awesome thing. And there's certainly more investigation that could be done there. And then Jeanette Thomas asked us a question. Can you use red light in lenses or other colors of light to make a kind of makeshift projector? And Casey, I think you looked at this one.
I did, yeah. So this is like similar to what we were doing last week. We were working with lenses and stuff. But basically, we found that you just need something as a light source, and then some kind of lens that takes that light source and puts it on a screen for you.
Whoa!
I see
and
a
so you
smiley
did.
face.
You made a little projector.
I did, yeah. And if you don't have a lens like this, we just got this at a garage sale. You can use anything that's rounded like this, such as this flask we have here. Just filled it with some water, and let's see, this one comes a little further back this time.
So you made a projector with a container of water, and go ahead and hold it nice and steady so Patrick can get a, oh my gosh, yes! You made a projector with a glass of water and a red light!
Yeah, and there's so many different things that you could change about this. You could see different containers, how that changes it. If you can make the screen brighter, see how you can make it bigger. There's lots of ways that you can go through this.
And then Casey, you and I are going to have a Blue Jolly Rancher. Oh yes, for our last experiment. And while we're getting ready for that, we're over to Brenna. And Brenna, Luciana and Gianna asked.
Yes, so Luciana and Gianna asked, why do dogs bark? Well, I don't really know how, why dogs bark, but I do know how, and I do know how to tell the size of a dog based on their bark, and it has to do with standing waves like Brian talked about earlier. So here I have this little speaker, and I have this tube, and if I play a mix of different sounds, see if I can get my phone open, it wants to look at me. If I play a mix of different sounds, which is called white noise, I can actually run that white noise through this tube, and depending on the length of the tube, it creates a higher or lower sound.
Whoa, I can hear that change.
So the longer tube creates a lower sound, the shorter tube creates a higher sound. So basically, if you have a bigger dog, they have a longer vocal tract, and thus they have a deeper bark.
Oh yeah, that's definitely low pitch. I'm afraid of that dog.
Yes, and this dog has a very high,
I'm not.
to the point where it's kind of hard to hear. So if you hear a high-pitched bark, you know that you have a small dog. If you have a low-pitched bark, you know you have a big dog.
And we're listening to those formants, and that's something we'll come back and talk about.
Yeah.
We're gonna do more with that. That kicked us off into an investigation. I will say, the questions that the kids asked were so amazing. It gave us all kinds of ideas for things that we need to try, not just now, but on future episodes. And then, Casey, we got one more question.
Yeah, Kennedy asked us, why do some foods that are healthy taste bad? For example, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and quinoa. And we took this question and we thought, well, when you're younger, you usually don't like things like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and quinoa. But as you get older, like your parents, they usually love them.
Yeah, like I love Brussels sprouts.
Oh yeah, me too at this point. But we thought, well, what's the difference between when you're younger and when you're older? And I found out that blue food dye, which is in things like Jolly Ranchers, or if you don't have any Jolly Ranchers, just plain old food coloring with water, it sticks to things on your tongue called papillae. So you can think that when you're younger, you have a lot more of these papillae, which are kind of like taste buds, and so you're more sensitive to tastes in the things of broccoli and Brussels sprouts, which are more bitter. Whereas when you get older...
Oh, goodness. Thank you for pointing that out, Casey.
Well, you are 156, so...
You lose some of these, and you're not as sensitive to that taste, and you kind of like it more. So what we did was we took some Jolly Ranchers, and we've had those in our mouth for a little bit now, and if you look at our tongues...
Oh my gosh. And Casey's is pretty... Oh, that's pretty blue.
Pretty blue. Brian's is not blue.
And the only... That is awesome. My tongue doesn't turn blue with that stuff. And so, the difference is
those
the amount of papillae.
Taste buds.
And that relates to sensitivity. This would be an awesome experiment. I'm thinking next family dinner, I'm going to pass around the Jolly Ranchers to the young people and the old people. We're going to see whose tongue turns bluest. And then we're going to pass around the Brussels sprouts.
That's how you could determine who goes first in a game. Whoever's tongue turns blue.
I like it. I like it. Oh my gosh, that was a fantastic question that really started us exploring a whole bunch of different things. But the final message for kids is, everything we've done today, this came out of your questions. Take a question, ask it, be curious, and think, what could I do? What variables could I change? What things could I try? How can I science it up? How can I turn this into a question that lets me start an investigation? And thank you for giving us the chance to do this. Next week, we're going to be back. We're going to do a show called Chemical or Physical. Tomorrow, we have a special installment of Little Shop of Physics Live. It's our open house. I want to say thanks to Brenna, thanks to Casey, thanks to Maud, thanks to Adam and Patrick, as always working behind the scenes. We are going to check out now, but we're going to be back online first thing tomorrow with the Little Shop of Physics Open House, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.